Good morning, my brothers and sisters, and all my friends. As we have done already, and we have investigated who is the real Guru, why humanity needs the tradition and the institution of the Guru. The humanity at the present time is going through a big crisis, a moral collapse, the global moral collapse, which is the result of the faulty education system. The Western education system creates and produces and prepares a human being to become a worker, become a 9-to-5 labor, to become a person dependent on somebody else. So we have created a global dependence, a system of global dependence after and the post-industrial revolution, where 99% of the humanity works for 1% of the masters. And that is against the evolutionary mandate. The evolutionary mandate is that every human being must be in the state of self-rule, the Swaraj, what Mahatma Gandhi used to call that Swaraj, self-rule. And it hardly matters, it doesn't make a big difference if you have 7 layers of a gentleman, including your overcoat and your big cap, yet you are just a worker. You are one of the labor, you are one of the great slave chain, you are one of the slave of 99%, working 9-to-5 for somebody else. Can you imagine a sovereign entity like a human being working for food, clothes, education, or all these 5 biological needs? My dear brothers and sisters, we need the Guru, the institution of Guru, to prepare the human beings for Swaraj, for the self-rule, that everyone must become the Swambhu, who rules himself. Until we don't prepare humanity for the self-rule, everyone ruling himself, we can't cultivate the global sense of responsibility, where every human being will contribute, where every human being will be responsible for his own actions, for his thought, word and deed. That responsibility cannot come in the victim mode. So 99% of the humanity is living under the victim mode. We have to pull the humanity out of the slave chain and the victim mode, because the victims never take initiative and they always complain and they always depend on others, so they never take initiative and they never take responsibility also, because they justify their actions. My dear brothers and sisters, so we need the institution of Guru. And this institution of Guru is the greatest gift of India, the wisdom tradition of India, to humanity. So we have to build a bridge between Eastern and Western education system in order to incorporate the wisdom resources of ancient India, the wisdom resources which could help every human being to become the responsible earth citizen, to develop the cosmic responsibility, the sense of cosmic responsibility, And for that, we have to pull out all the 99% of the humanity in the volunteer mode. From the victim mode, we have to bring them to the volunteer mode. And when a person is in the volunteer mode, that attitude of the mind, then he will take the complete responsibility for his thought, word and deed on earth. And that cannot be done under the Western system of education, because it is only designed to prepare and designed to produce and designed to transform the human beings into the slaves, working for 1% of masters. My dear brothers and sisters, we need to change all that, and we need to, I'm not advocating of changing for a violent change, but I'm advocating for well-informed, engaged change, so that we could all become the example of the change we are seeking. So we need the institution of the Guru, which will have the effect, which will prepare every human being under the current education system, incorporated with the wisdom of India, ancient India, of Satya Dharma, the religion of truth. And that will help for the effect from down the base of the pyramid to travel towards the apex. But that is a very, very slow change. So incorporating the institution of Guru, the wisdom resources of the Guru tradition from India, the change will be so slow that it will take many centuries. So we are left with no other choice than to look for and prepare the leaders. And a leader has the top-down effect. The Guru effect travels from base of the pyramid towards the apex. So in order to accelerate the change, we need to have the leaders, responsible leaders, as the real leaders, so that we could have a top-down effect, a trickle-down effect very quickly. Because we have to accelerate the change in 21st century before we destroy ourselves. We have come to that risk, that edge, that point of crisis, where it may happen any time, because when we look at the global scenario of indiscriminate violence, of terrorism, it's impossible to think. Can you imagine 100 years before that there will be a time for the civilized world where people will be practicing the acts of terrorism, where one person will blow up himself just for the express reason and the ambition to blow up other hundreds innocent people. Impossible to imagine 100 years back such acts of humanity, such terrible acts of humanity, because of self-possessive idealism. My dear brothers and sisters, we need those leaders who could show us the path, because we need to balance the Guru effect and leadership effect. The Guru effect takes long time for the effect to travel from the base of the pyramid towards the apex. But we do need to create the great effect and a complete change of the humanity, we need to incorporate the Guru tradition in our education system. So we need to build a bridge of Eastern education system and the Western education system. Along with the Guru tradition, we need to have the leaders, we need to inform the humanity that we need the leaders who are really leaders. And let me tell you this, that the leadership is not a profession, by the way. The problem with the modern times is that we have another pandemic, a global disease, a global confusion, a global wrong concept that the leadership could be a profession. Leadership is not the profession. It could never be the profession. It's the mission. And to understand the mission and leadership, we need to investigate the attitude of a Mahayana Buddhism, a Mahayana Buddhist. The great land of snow, Tibet, had the great tradition of Mahayana Buddhism. And under the Mahayana Buddhism, the greater vehicle, that when the Bodhisattva realizes that he's at the age of, he has already seen, he had the glimpse of his own nirvana. In the other words, he has gone over the top of the mountain and sees the sunrise and sunset of his own nirvana. He has already seen, he has already felt that it is very near. And then he looks back where he came from the samsara, from the world of suffering. And he remembers that where he came from, the humanity is suffering. So he turns back. He turns his back to his own nirvana and says, I don't need the nirvana. I will work, from this moment I will work for the nirvana of the other sentient beings. And I will seek my nirvana in their nirvana. I will seek my happiness in their happiness. I will seek my security in their security. So he decides to perform a great yagya, which is known as Narmegh Yagya in the wisdom tradition of India. What is Narmegh Yagya? The Narmegh Yagya is performed by a person who sacrifices his ego completely. His own identity is no more important. And he gives up even his right to happiness, which is the fundamental right of life, that every sentient being has the fundamental right to be happy and to have a happy existence. He gives up even that my happiness is not important, my nirvana is not important, my security is not important. And what is important? That I'll seek my happiness in other people's happiness. And I'll work for their nirvana, I'll work for their freedom, and I'll work for their liberation. So he steps down from the top of the mountain where he has this great glimpse of his own nirvana, his sunrise and sunset of his nirvana. He steps down from the top to the 99th step. And this 99th step, he has given up one step. And what is that one step? 100th step. he has given up that step for the mission of his life, to seek the nirvana of other sentient beings. And he establishes himself on 99th step as the representative of God, as the custodian of the kingdom of God on earth. And he says, from today onwards, from this moment onwards, I'll work for the happiness of other sentient beings, and I'll work for the nirvana of other sentient beings. And he's the Bodhisattva under the tradition of Mahayana Buddhism. And without cultivating this attitude of Bodhisattva, we can't have the true leaders. And we need the true leaders today in 21st century to accelerate the change and to accelerate the building of moral sense, the building of character, moral character of the human being. To make the human being, every person, every human being responsible for their own thought, word and deed. To develop the cosmic sense of responsibility. My dear brothers and sisters, we need the real leaders. As it says in Bhagwat Gita, Lord Krishna said that the people will follow the leaders. Anyone who is there like an avatar, who is the real leader, and the majority of humanity has a tendency, has an inherent attitude to follow the leader. So the great Mahatma saints and yogis and the great leaders, they are the symbol of evolution, the symbol of the path leading to the great heights of evolution. So the humanity naturally gets attracted towards them and they follow them. And they follow not only their teachings, but they even imitate like children. They imitate their every behavior. As you have seen in the great freedom struggle of India, the whole country started wearing the Gandhi cap. Whatever Mahatma Gandhi used to do, they used to copy that. This is the leader of, this is the effect of the leadership. And that it really means by who leads. The one who leads is a leader. Simple. So we need that Mahayana attitude. We need a Bodhisattva vow, a Bodhisattva attitude, a Bodhisattva intention and resolution to work for the whole humanity. The one who will work for the nirvana of the whole humanity. My dear brothers and sisters, we have a global collapse of the moral. Our leaders today are only professionals. And they are only after their self-glory and their own gratification. And they are not the leaders. We need the leaders who will perform the Narmegh Yagya, who will sacrifice the men, who will sacrifice the great mind, who has the ego as the foundation. The time when our mind sacrifices happily own ego, own identity, believe me, our mind gets transformed into the universal mind. To transform our mind into universal mind, the mind of a universal leader, the mind of a universal, compassionate Bodhisattva, we need to sacrifice the ego and become like the molecule of water. This Narmegh Yagya will transform the human mind into universal mind. And without having the universal mind, no one could be the right leader. Nobody could be the real leader. Because as we know that the molecule of water wakes up everybody's potential. The greatest contribution of the molecule of water is that it motivates everyone, all molecules and the atoms in the universe, that they must wake up to their own glory. That is the real job of molecule of water. And molecule of water is egoless, doesn't insist on the form, color, identity, or form, taste. No identity. Just a helping hand of God, the hand of God, the greatest molecule of non-local consciousness. So to develop and cultivate the non-local consciousness and the universal mind, transform our own mind to the universal mind of a leader, we need to perform the Narmegh Yagya. We have to give up the ego identity. And that is the last station in the science of yoga. When we achieve the dissolution of our own mind in its own cause, its own ahamkara, and when it is dissolved into its own cause, we reach to the state of kaivalya, which is called in the Jewish tradition Kabala, and in the mystic tradition which is known as Kybalion, and in the science of yoga it is known as kaivalya. It's the same word. So that state where our mind gets transformed into universal consciousness, the universal mind, so that we could feel the pain and suffering of everybody, the last one in the line. And that is the job, and that is the station of the true leader. The leader who has a mission, not a profession. My dear brothers and sisters, thank you very much and have a very, very beautiful day.